Hi, I'm Steve, co-founder of Company of Makers.
And I'm Cullen, an actor and former Royal Marines commando.
And today we're going to be talking about some of the questions that we want to answer or got asked about our recent podcast. So one of the questions we wanted to ask and hopefully answer was why cover Telic, or as it's known, the Iraq War?
And the stories we listen to and the stories that we all tell and the discussions we have about the Iraq War will go on for long after we've passed on.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a very important moment in British history, and I think a very important moment for the British Armed Forces as well.
And for me, it was pivotal in my career and my life.
So what do you think our guests have in common, Tip?
I thought about this quite a bit in reflection, and all of them, incredible characters anyway, but it was their professionalism. They endeavoured continually to better or perfect their art, or the art of soldiering, like we discussed, the art of soldiering. So whatever level they were at, they looked after their people and their own ability as a soldier or as a service person, they wanted to optimise continually. And an opportunity to prove this on operations, I think for all service people, is never missed.
Mm. I mean, that's part of the reason why you join up, isn't it? But I think also there's the issue that they were also prepared to share their stories. And I think I'm right in saying that absolutely everybody was pleased to be invited to be a guest on the podcast, to share their stories.
From what I've seen, service people, they've got quite a unique creative ability. Once they unlock that door, I think their ability to tell stories, spin dates, create things, be artistic is very important. And like, all the way those, can we say, endeavouring to perfect their new skills, they take that as well with them, yeah, and their new aspirations or their new endeavours. And it's like when you step through your career in the services and you get leadership, a big thing that came across throughout the actual stories is that it's like a parental responsibility. Yeah. I mean, I was told as a young corporal that to be a section commander or a section 2IC, you become a parent, you become a father, as it was in the Corps at the time. And you're responsible for your people in your family. So if they're good, you give them a chuck up, you say, well done, and give them some direction. If they're not as good as they should be, you endeavour to get them on the right path and give them the right choice or steer them towards the correct direction, moral direction that they should follow. And throughout our stories, all our people said that, didn't they? They had that responsibility.
They did, but I'm wondering if any of our viewers may have received some, as you put it, moral direction from your own good self. How was that? How was that for them, do you think?
I think if anyone listens to this, they know that I know that they know they benefited from it.
I'm sure they did. So the final question we wanted to talk about was whether Operation Telic or the Iraq War was worth it. I mean, it was a monumental decision and it had consequences. And I think now looking back on it, people's opinions may have changed or mellowed, but it's an important thing to talk about, isn't it?
And people will be talking about it for well after our lifetime, like we said, and be discussing it. For me, as a serving Royal Marine at the time, it was an opportunity to be operational and practice the skills that you train at day in, day out. So that brings a certain level of excitement to it, but realisation, you have to be careful for what you wish for. And that soon became very relevant when we lost all our lads and we had to react to it and carry on. When we actually landed on the L4 and we started taking positions, the civilian population there, they looked upon us as liberators. They never looked upon us as invaders. We were liberating them from Saddam Hussein. And that feeling, after losing so many of our friends, was very important. And there was a certain level of satisfaction that we'd done the right thing and the job was done correctly. What happened after that was really beyond our control. But like what I do know, and from the stories, what we do know is that our service people, they done the job all the way through Operation Telic to the, you know what I mean, 100% of their professional ability.
And of course, some of those people actually paid the highest price, and that's what Paula's story tells us about, the loss of her husband, Paul.
Yeah, I previously said, and when you interviewed me, I was reluctant to even get involved with telling stories because of the proximity to my own experiences and people that I had, you know, working relationships with and friendship relationships with them and their families. Having to talk about something that's so emotionally close to my heart it's very testing. But it's also very important to tell the story because real people's stories are what it's all about. And it's not, you don't rehearse it, it's life. And I think more people that tell their story, they don't nick other people's stories, they tell their story and just tell it as themselves. I think everyone benefits from that.
And I think it's also important to talk about these stories because people, you know, there have been consequences for people, and we need to be able to talk about them to encourage people to step forward. If we're only talking about, shall we say, World War II, when there are very few left, then I think it's those recent conflicts where a lot of the challenges are coming from in terms of their experiences. And I think that's something it's really important to talk about. And like I said, you know, many of our guests said they were, you know, pleased to be invited to do it because clearly there wasn't a national commemoration, and I think there ought to be more recognition of the service that people have provided.
And that service is ongoing. The way the world is at the minute, and how, with Ukraine, with the threats around the globe, this is going to be ongoing. And if we can get our people to tell their stories and to communicate so that future generations know potentially what they could experience and what the outcomes may be, I think that's important as well.
Extremely important. So finally, if you've listened to our podcast, we'd like to thank you. If you haven't, why not? We'd love you to have a listen. But also, if you've got any comments or questions about the podcast or anything that anybody said in the podcast, please put your comments below and we will endeavour to answer all of them.
And if you've enjoyed the podcast and listened to our people's stories, share it, get it out there. Give it to your families, give it to your friends, give it to a wider community, give it to anyone. Because again, I'm sure they will benefit from listening to real people's stories.
They will, and we will put the links to the podcast in the description as well.